I was born the seventh child in a family of 12. And as we grew up, we all had jobs to do. When I turned 16, I automatically became the family driver. The girls couldn't drive, and so I became the family driver. 4 years later, my brother asked me to take him to the post office to enlist in the Air Force. He and his friend had draft numbers, and I did not have a draft number. I was too young. We got into the recruiter's office, and they went up to the recruiter's table, and the first question the recruiter asked them is, were they high school graduates? And both of them were high school dropouts. So I went by the door, never moved yet, and I was ready to leave, and the recruiter said, "How about you?" I said, "I qualify." He said, "Come back here and sign up." So I signed up. He told me, this was 10 o'clock in the morning, he told me to go home and say goodbye to my parents and come back, and we'd go to Peoria to be sworn in. And I did that. I came back, and I went, and I was gone for 4 years.
You left the same day you signed up?
Within hours.
Wow.
During the week, we could get up maybe 6 to 7 o'clock and get down to the hangar line and work. On Sunday, we got breakfast, a big banquet every Sunday, and that occurred at 8 o'clock. And I was on my way to breakfast when the first bomb was dropped in a barracks next to us. The first bomb, there were only 2 barracks at Wheeler Field, and we were back to back with a greenway between the barracks. And one of our guys was washing his car in a greenway, and the bomb took him out. And we came down the steps. It was screaming announced that the Japanese were attacking. So we came down to leave the barracks. And there's like a big veranda in the front of the barracks, and we kind of stood out in the veranda. We could look at the street. And one of our guys was shot when they were strafing down the street. The planes were so low you could just about reach them if you reached up, if you were tall enough. And they were strafing up and down the street. And we were told not to go out because even though the plane flew over, the rear gunner was also in action, so he could also pick you off. So when the planes got far enough away, we would come out and lead the barracks, and right across the street was the NCO quarters, homes, and that's what we were trying to get to across. There are about 3 or 4 blocks of homes there. So as they strafed and got past the barracks, we would run across the street and abandon the barracks. I think I went about 4 blocks before I entered a home and sat on the kitchen floor till the raid was over. In the house that I was in, there was about 5 of us, and the guy that lived in the house was in there. He said, "You single guys should go down to the line." And they were still strafing. None of us went, naturally.
How long did the attack last?
Well, it probably was 15 minutes for us. And we never did ever go back to the barracks. We stayed in the field from then on. And I probably spent 50% of my time sleeping on the ground for 5 years.
Getting back to the line, what did you see when you got back there?
All we could do when we went back to the line is try to salvage whatever planes we could from the burning heap that they were in. And most of the planes that we salvaged were World War I planes, P-26 and the P-36. All of our planes were P-40s, and they were all burnt up.
So the vast majority were lost?
The vast majority, 150 planes we lined up. Yeah.
Were there personnel at Wheeler who were lost as well?
Many. See, when I did my basic training, when we arrived at Wheeler Field, we formed 3 squadrons, 45th, 46th, and 47th Fighter Squadron. And we did our basic training living in 8-man tents. So I would venture to guess, and they were all wide open during the strafing raid. At least we had the barracks to protect us.
Did you know some of the victims well?
They were from Illinois and Wisconsin. They were friends of mine, some high school friends of mine. The 1,500 of us that were recruited were from Illinois and Wisconsin.
So these are all the people you started with?
They're the same one. And by coincidence, we also met them on Iwo Jima.
All right, let's move to Iwo Jima.
Okay.
When did you find out that you were going to Iwo Jima?
That was interesting, too. After 4 years of service in the Pacific, I was offered a furlough. Fortunate for me, some of the guys that worked under me also were offered a furlough. And we came home. Well, when we came back from furlough, the people who were sending us back at Fort Sheridan in Chicago couldn't believe it. So what they did was claim to lose our paper. Take a minute.
Take your time.
So they claimed that they lost our papers. So from then on, for about 2 weeks, we got off every day. So Milwaukee being closer to Chicago, I went to Milwaukee every day on the trolley. So finally they had to admit that they had our paper, they sent us back. At that time, the troops were being discharged from the European theater at the same base. But anyway, we went back. We were assigned to go to the Philippines. We loaded our equipment. We're lined up next to the boat to go. And MacArthur came up from Australia, so we were canceled out. So then we went back to another airfield and waited, and then they called us up to go to Iwo Jima. That trip we took. So the way the operation was set up, our planes and our engineers stayed in Guam, and we went to Iwo Jima to set up the airfield so the planes could come in. We were designated to land D+4. The Marines didn't have the airfield secured 4 days. So every day we went out to sea. Every morning we came back to land. And we finally got ashore. And every day we came back was attacked by the kamikazes. Finally, they secured the airfield, and we landed. In all those 9 days, the bodies of the Marines were piled up. Well, anyway, we got on the airfield and looked over the situation. I was assigned to set up the operation for the planes to come in. Set up each operator, the pilot quarters or the pilot ready room, and all the way down to communication and everything else. So we got that set up.
And where was that?
Right alongside the airfield, on one side of the airfield. Well, anyway, we need the sand of Iwo Jima was like water, fluid. You could not dig a hole in the sand. So we had to go get a bulldozer to dig out and build a revetment for each section of our group to work. So the ordnance officer and I went across the sea beach and got a CB to come across with a bulldozer. We were coming out of the airfield, and we were all of a sudden sitting up there by ourselves. The CB was underneath the bulldozers, and mortar was landing all around the bulldozer. Well, fortunately, I didn't get hit, or none of us got hit. But we got the airfield set up.
What did that involve? What did you need to do to properly set up the airfield?
Well, we had to dig out revetments to get anything solid, or we got it. In our case, we needed a lot of work room, and you couldn't even stand in it; you sank down. So we got up on the landing crafts when they had wood. on the craft. So, and we had a three-quarter ton pickup. So we loaded it up, and we'd come and lay a wooden floor on top of the sand, so we could stand. And on top of the wood, then we had to build big workbenches. We had to dismantle all the guns on the planes, whether they fired or not, every day. They rusted up in one day, and that was constant all the way through the Hawaiian Islands too, in Midway. They could only be left alone one day and it'd be rusty the next day. So we laid the wooden floors and we had our operation going. And the planes came in the morning. It's memories. Planes would come in the morning, we're strafing in the afternoon. Same day. And the target was so close that the empty cartridges from the gun shooting, being shot in the plane, were landing on the airfield. In other words, the Japanese were just on the other side of the airfield. I think they were close to the second airfield, which intersected with the first airfield. So if I was to get, the guns are synchronized for 1,000 feet, so that's about 3 blocks. So the Japanese target was only about 3 blocks away from where we were. And in talking about the 45th and 46th and 47th, we were on airbase number 1, and they came on airbase number 2. And one morning, when we all got up in the dark. And started to work. One morning we got up, and the guns were firing, rifles were firing, and the Japanese were attacking the pilots of the 45th, 46th, and 47th squadrons right next to us. They got in their tents and were bayoneting sabers and whatnot. That's how close they were.
Could you hear it? Were you able to engage them and push them back?
Well, the people in those 3 squadrons, plus all the off-flying, we knew them all. And the officers were the target. So on we go.
What was the impact on your unit after that?
We never had a problem with what everybody worked, everybody did their job. So we would get a call on a mission to load napalm bombs, and we'd load the bombs, and they'd bomb and load the 500. See, normally a fighter plane wouldn't have, like we dropped 500-pound bombs, and napalm were probably 400 or 500 pounds too. And that was a constant flow of ammunition over the targets. Once the need for support for the Marines stopped, and our planes were escorting B-29s to Japan. So the B-29s that were damaged in Japan would fly over, and they couldn't make it back to Guam, and they'd bail out. and the plane would go out to sea. And that was every flight of 3 or 4 planes would come over. And one plane didn't go out to sea. It made a U-turn and landed on top of 9 of our airplane. It was a big hullabaloo, too.
How much greater was your resolve after you saw what the Japanese had done to your fellow airmen? Did it make you more determined? Did it make you...
We were always determined. We never backed down. I mean, it was a constant. I stayed on Iwo Jima for 9 months. And I left Iwo Jima the day they were going to drop the atomic bomb. We were scheduled. I was scheduled to fly out of Iwo Jima to Guam, and then from Guam to Honolulu. And I flew from Iwo Jima to Guam, and that night the captain of the ship called us aboard and took off. The bomb was going to be dropped the next day. So instead of going from Guam, from Iwo Jima to Guam to Honolulu, we went by ship around Midway. In the day the war was over, we were the day the war was over, we were 1 day out of San Francisco. Now, being that we did go to Honolulu, they turned us around and sent us back to Honolulu. So we went towards Honolulu for 1 day, and then they turned us around again and sent us to Seattle. We were the first ship to land in Seattle. And that night we had dinner served by the German prisoners of war. Next day we left.
The military commanders, one of the main reasons they went to Iwo Jima is because they believed that airfield was critical to victory in the war. So what does it mean to you that you had a role in that airfield being a critical factor in winning the war?
I knew it was critical. I knew it was critical when we were there and what we were doing. And we just did our job like we were supposed to do it. Nobody ever backed down, and it was all gung-ho, straight ahead.
But of course, securing the island and securing the airfield came at a great cost. And you saw that cost up close.
Yeah, I saw him bury the dead. Being not a very real large island, it was not a place to have a cemetery, so the Marine cemetery was dug out in the sand and deep, so that they lay down one group of body bags, covered them with sand, lay down another group. And figured they buried maybe 5,000. There was a lot of tight body bags covered, 5 deep. It wasn't very good. And 20 wounded, 20,000. They didn't expect to. Normal division at 5,000, and normally they were figuring on using about 4,000. And there were 20,000 wounded and 5,000 dead. When I was talking about coming ashore, the bodies were still not identified yet. They were just piled up in piles and piles. They had a fingerprint them and identify the bodies and do all that stuff.
Do you still think about them often? Do you still think about them often?
For years I fought war. I would have to say I think about them all the time. All the time. It's hard to forget.
Indeed. Sir, do you remember seeing the flag atop Mount Suribachi?
That was interesting. The Marines fought their way up Suribachi, and after they put up the flag and secured the island, the Seabees came and they put a road right up there. Put a road right up to the top. That's where we went up the road. The Marines were unbelievable. The Seabees were unbelievable. Seabees, I should say.
And I understand you actually own a picture of the first flag that was raised that was never made public. Is that right?
The first flag was taken down it was never made public. Something didn't work out right for the public.
And you had a friend that took a picture of that, right?
Right.
What does it mean to you to have that historic photo that virtually no one else has seen?
I have it on my dresser all the time.
What do you think about when you look at it?
I have to say, I am proud to be a veteran of the war. Took us a long time, but we got it done.